Hi, I'm Tree Knowlton. I am currently the coordinator of Herbalists Without Borders Eugene chapter. I've been an herbalist for a while. I got trained at the Columbine School of Botanical Studies after I got a degree in landscape architecture, because I had a notion that if I knew something about the uses of plants, that I could add that to my design toolbox. And lo and behold, I actually got turned in the process. I fell in love with the plants and the herbalism, and now I use my landscape architecture degree as a tool to inform my herbalism in my garden at Treestead, where I grow lots of food and flowers and plant medicine for people and animals and insects. And I did so quietly and happily. I helped out. I worked on the treatment team at Occupy Medical for a bunch of years, and then just kind of minded my own business until I got an email one day during that year that there was a Class 5 hurricane in the Gulf and Montana was burning down at the same time. The email said, "Hey Tree, Herbalists Without Borders needs some donations for these disasters that are going on." And I was like, Herbalists Without Borders, who's that? So I looked them up. I saw what they were about. I made a big old donation package and sent it out. I learned in my research about who they are that they have chapters all around the world. They're a nonprofit NGO, all volunteer organization, and any one chapter might aspire to planting a community garden or having a free clinic or being activists out in the street or doing first aid or donating to disaster relief, mutual aid stuff. So I thought, I'll just put together a chapter for Eugene and say, hey, y'all, I got this little nonprofit umbrella over here if you want to stand underneath it. Now we have been putting together disaster relief boxes. We have been partnering with Huerto de la Familia throughout the pandemic to provide wellness care packages for BIPOC. BIPOC vaccine clinics, been providing doorstep COVID care to sick families. We have participated in the Share Fair and tabling at events, and we aspire to get a free clinic, a mobile free clinic put together. We were sort of gifted a garden patch by Huerto de la Familia, where we're developing a bilingual learning space to share with the community. If you're interested in getting involved with HWB, Herbalists Without Borders, the international organization of which we are a part, you can reach out to them. They have a website, hwb.org, hwbglobal.org, maybe. Try them both. Google knows. Where you can be a member and you get more access to more resources. If you're out in the world and there isn't a chapter available in your area, you could start a chapter, and the headquarters could help you do that. If you're interested in getting involved in the Eugene chapter, you could go to hwbeugene.org, where we have a website that tells you what we have been up to, and also a volunteer page where you can sign up to be helpful in whatever way you feel led to do so. You can also donate to us through the international PayPal website. That'd be the chickens, the chicken dinosaur. And if you do make a donation through the international organization, you just specify that it's for HWB Eugene, and then they forward it to us. Instagram and Facebook, you'll find us at HWB Eugene. TikTok, I'm told I'm too old for that shit. I don't know nothing about no TikTok. But there might be a dance coming up soon.
What is your favorite or some of your favorite resources for learning herbalism?
Resources, I love conferences for learning herbalism because you can go kind of shopping. You can take a class from an herbalist that you don't know anything about, or you can say, oh, there's one of my favorites, and you can take another class from a favorite. I love that. I love resources like books. I'm a book geek, and I have a wall full of books that I aspire to read sometime before I die. Probably not going to happen though. I do learn from myself as well. Learn by doing. Well, that didn't work. I guess I'll have to try something else.
What is one thing you do daily to practice your craft?
I walk in my garden. Yeah.
What herb introduced you to the healing world of plants?
Yarrow. I lived up in the mountains outside of Ashland, Oregon, 6 miles up, and we worked at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. And we lived on this acreage that was adjacent to a bunch of county land, and so we had lots of roaming space. And when we had a day off, we didn't want to leave the mountain. So I would wander around, and there was this little plant. It looked kind of ferny. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know why it was there, but it just seemed like it was vital, like it was full of important life that I didn't yet know about, but I wanted to.
What's your favorite way to introduce children to herbalism?
Plant walks and the Wildcraft game. My grandson loves that game, and he's got it down.
What is one of the most significant stories you have about a time you helped someone with a health issue using your knowledge of herbalism?
This woman was suggested to come to me. She had gut issues. She's from Mexico. She's bilingual, and she was very motivated. She was emailed an intake form, and she didn't have the technology to just email it back to me. She got it printed out at work, and she took it home and filled it out, and she took it back to work, and she got it back to me somehow. It was extra steps anyway to get it to me, and she came to the appointment for her gut issues and her sleep problems. And what happened instead, we started to go through the intake form, and she was telling me about her gut issues and her sleep problems, and then suddenly her life story was coming out about marital distress and family issues and a death in the family, and feeling betrayed by her church and having no place to go, and not knowing what to do, and never told anybody all of this before, and doesn't know why she's crying now, and and so we talked for 2 hours. She talked for 2 hours, and I offered her some Nervine to help with her tension and her stress, a gentle Nervine. And she took it, and I made some other suggestions about, activity, exercise. Even if you're running up the stairs instead of taking the elevator, that's exercise. Like that. She came back for a follow-up, and back for a follow-up and back for a follow-up. And every time she came back for a follow-up, she had done the thing that I had suggested. She had made improvements. She had gotten to a place after 2 years of rapport and some herbal interventions, but mostly just suggestions of diet and exercise and supplements and encouragement. And I believe in you. She fucking left her husband, the asshole deadbeat, and she quit that job that was patently racist, relentlessly racist, and she does some public work on behalf of the community now, and she presents at conferences about empowering women. And I just love that she has that in her, and that I had the great good fortune to be present when she was at my door to make her own turn in her own life.
Do you have any advice on working the business side of herbalism? I don't know if this was a question for you or not.
Made my husband laugh when I read it out loud. The answer is, get yourself a person that loves business. That's not me.
How long did you study plant medicine before feeling qualified to call yourself an herbalist?
Well, it had been a few years at least, and at Columbine School of Botanical Studies, there was a conversation about when do you get to call yourself an herbalist, and the general notion to consider was that you might consider yourself an herbalist when somebody else calls you an herbalist, and that made a certain amount of sense to me. Nonetheless, I had been working for Occupy Medical, co-lead on the treatment team for over a year, I think, before I asked for coffee with Howie and asked him about that very question. Calling yourself an herbalist, and what do I do with this? And how do I live inside of it? And he handed me a list of things that herbalists can do in the world that Seven Song manifested. So I guess that's part of the question, but sometimes I still feel like I have so much to learn that I haven't quite gotten there yet. I don't know when there is, really.
What does the herbalism industry need most right now to evolve positively, besides more herbalists?
To kneecap Big Pharma.
What do you do when you see someone that you don't know well dealing with an issue that you're pretty sure you could help with, but they haven't asked for help?
Yeah. It depends, is my short answer. I usually hate it when somebody uses that answer. But, if the person is just talking out loud about this issue that they have and they wish they had some help for it, and they seem like they're earnest and they want some help for it, then I might offer suggestions or services if they are interested in hearing about them, and let them decide whether they want the answer to that question or not. But often I just keep my mouth shut because everybody's got an opinion, and sometimes people already have a team of caregivers and they don't really need more opinions. So I just kind of weigh it out that way, whether they're actually looking for help or whether they're just making conversation.
What is one of your most profound experiences with a
again with the Columbine School Botanical Studies. That CBS thing. It was a field trip to meet the peony brownie eye in the Cascade Mountains, and part of the lesson was that it's kind of elusive and it's out there in the open land, but it's hard to see. And I was standing there looking at it, was everywhere. I kept seeing it everywhere. And then we'd move to another place and we'd have more of the lesson, and he'd quiz us on how many we see. And, you know, I see 2, I see 3, I see 1, I don't see any. I'd say, I see 7, I see 15. And at the end of the day, even after harvesting, I didn't want to harvest it. It didn't feel right. I found this giant specimen, and I dug into the ground, and I did all of the steps to harvesting that we learn about in the school, and I only had the nerve to break off a little piece of the root structure under there, and then I covered it up, and then I cried. And then at the end of the day, Howie pulled me aside and said, it seems like you have an affinity for peony brownie eye, and you might want to check into that. And so there you have it. That's about as profound as I can think at the moment. And my connection to the plant is still elusive, but I do love it. And people since then have given me peonies. They're not brownie eye, but they are peonies. And they're just about to bloom in my garden here.
What is the first plant you remember having a relationship with as a kid?
Mustard. Mustard flowers in the field. We lived by the Willamette River off of River Road in Eugene, and we would go play out in the horse field and down the path near the river that we weren't supposed to do without adults, but we did it anyway. And the mustard flowers would bloom, and I would pick them and bring them home, and I press them between the pages of my some big book that a grandmother gave to me, you know, the Child's Book of Verses. And that book is still on my shelf over there, and it's got these dry little smears of mustard flowers in between the pages even still.
What's your favorite part of being an herbalist?
I feel a little bit like a little bit of a hooligan, and feel a little artsy, and I feel a little sciencey, and I like that combination.
And last but not least, what's your big why that keeps you learning and growing?
Well, it's always been true that the more I learn, the less I know. And so that's my underlying motivation. Because I'm curious, and I also have this dumbass core issue of needing to do it right enough. Maybe I'll be cured of that someday. And there's so much available to learn and have access to that is also helpful, or not. And when I learn if it's helpful or not, then I can apply it or discard it.